Welcome, everyone. My name is Jessica Tate, and my pronouns are she and her. Gidlach Dhamix Wilta. I am from Gidlach Dhamix, and I am currently grateful to be a guest on the lands that are part of the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit. I am a program coordinator with ICE and have been transitioning into the sustainable transportation lead in the last few months. We are very happy to have you all join us today for the Electrify Your Fleet with Plug and Drive webinar. And I'm sure we have a variety of guests joining us today. Some of you may be entrepreneurs looking to incorporate electric vehicles or EVs into your businesses. You may be working for your public works departments or for friendship centers, or you may simply want to learn more about EVs, infrastructure, and fleets. We are very grateful to have you all. Throughout the presentation, you are welcome to enter questions into the chat, and we will address them following the presentation. Before introducing you to our guest today, I also wanted to invite you all to join the ICE network. If you're not already a member, although I know many of you are, it is free to join and it's open, and it's a great place to learn about funding, to learn about events, and to connect with others working in the clean energy sector. So I will just drop that in the chat here for everyone. And yes, and also just to let you know, for those of you that are a little bit familiar with our Charge Up program, which is ICE's EV infrastructure funding program, we will be making an exciting announcement soon, so you definitely don't want to miss that. So please, if you're not already a member of the ICE network, be welcome to join. And so now I would like to introduce you to our very knowledgeable speaker today. Ron Groves brings a wealth of experience with over 40 years working in various roles of the automotive industry, with a more recent focus on electric vehicles when he joined Plug and Drive in 2012. After having a chance to meet with Ron a few times, it's been clear to me that he has a great passion for sustainable energy initiatives, and also with sharing with those eager to learn about the experience of driving electric vehicles, as well as the impacts, positive impacts and benefits of the transition to EVs. So with that, Ron, please take it away.
Thank you very much for the kind introduction, Jessica. I did say, she said knowledgeable off the front. She meant knowledgeable in EVs. I'm not a member of Mensa, so yes, my background is transportation all my life, and so welcome everybody to the Plug and Drive Electrify Your Fleet webinar. And I was perusing the email list just before, and I noticed from the emails, sometimes you can tell where people are from, and it's fantastic to see the reach that the Indigenous Clean Energy Network has. Right across Canada, we see people from Vancouver Island, BC, north, up in the north, throughout the northern provinces, out into Ontario. So super great to see such interest, such keen interest from you right across the country. Also, you know, we have to keep in mind that we have 45 minutes here with questions at the end. And, you know, this is a big and meaty topic. Electrifying your fleet is, you know, it's a meaty topic in itself, never mind electrifying it. So basically what I hope to accomplish with you today is to stir your interest a little bit. I don't know where you are on the so-called learning curve. Are you new to the EV world? Have you already put some EVs in your fleet? Do you own one yourself? And, you know, what kind of research have you done already? But we hope to broadly cover the topic and introduce you to resources and some of the information which will help shorten your learning curve. I did notice one of the participants was from NRCan, Natural Resources Canada. Thank you very much to NRCan, without whose funding some of our programs at Plug and Drive wouldn't be possible. And we also thank the Indigenous Clean Energy Network for facilitating this fleet webinar as well. So without further ado, let's dive in, shall we? And I'll just show you, a little bit about what we're going to cover here today. And so, who the heck is Plug and Drive? We're going to demystify or try to shed some light on why electrifying your fleet is a good idea, and is it the right idea for your fleet where you are. It may not be for everybody right now, maybe down the road, but at least with the information we're going to provide, maybe it will help you make some of those decisions, whether it's something you do today, tomorrow, or in a couple of years. Looking at the EVs that are out there, what kinds are there? And then, of course, charging. This is sort of the elephant in the room. We all know how to gas up a vehicle, but what about this charging, and especially in a fleet application? Who doesn't love incentives? And again, thank you, NRCan and the ICE Network with their announcement coming up shortly with regards to chargers. So we're going to just take a quick overview of incentives that are available, and both for vehicles and charging, and we'll give you some links to those. And then how could you test drive an EV, and the opportunities that will be coming up to do that, hopefully in your neighborhood, if not soon, then maybe down the road, because we love putting bums in seats. That's what Plug and Drive has been doing for about almost 12 years now. So I've been a product specialist with Plug and Drive. I was one of the original 4, and it was started by our president and CEO, right in the center there, Kara Clareman. And it was her vision to back 12 years ago when we saw, she came from the power sector. And the power sector, of course, right across Canada, we have all of this electricity. In many cases, we have a surplus of energy, especially at night. And so what could we do with this energy? And EVs, of course, spend a good amount of their time in our driveway overnight, even in a fleet application. They're in a yard somewhere. And so her idea was to start up a nonprofit, which was strictly about public education for EVs. We don't sell the cars. We have relationships with a wide variety of manufacturers. And our role was to basically provide a nice environment to come, sort of a cross between a car dealership and a science center, where you could come and speak to EV owners without the pressure tactics of buying a car, and learn all about EVs, and ultimately take one for a test drive. We did this for a number of years, 6, 7 years, just out in the field. We took the cars and our tents and flagged out into the field to wherever there were people, events, or wherever we could find interest. And that works to a certain extent, but as we know in Canada, it does become winter, and it's not very nice standing out in a cold parking lot talking to people about EVs. And so we built a center, and that's the original one in the background, and we have a new one now in Northern Toronto. So this all started in Toronto, in Ontario, but in the meantime, we have expanded the reach of Plug and Drive right across the country. And we've done that through our roadshow events, which we now take on the road, not just in Ontario. Hey, the good news is the cars can go farther. In the early days, they only went 135 kilometers. So not much point in going too far, test driving them, you still had to get home, right? Now we've got lots of range in these cars. So we can take the roadshow on the road all over the countryside. And it's a great way for us to visit pop-up events and locations across the country. But we also realized that, again, even in the spring, summer, and fall, it can rain, it's sunny and hot. And so wouldn't it be nice to have sort of a pop-up electric vehicle discovery center where we could just roll this thing in, open it up, surround it with electric test drive vehicles. You can see on the right there, this was actually right here in Canmore, where I'm coming to you from. And this past year, we were in Canmore, Banff, and Edmonton. And so this is called our mobile EV education trailer. And I hope, if you keep an eye on our website, that this trailer, we have 2 of them across Canada, will be coming to a variety of places across Canada where you can come and visit us, talk to us about EVs, and test drive some as well. So keep an eye on our 2023 schedule of events for the meet and our roadshow events. And as I mentioned off the top, we are a nonprofit. So how the heck have we kept the lights on and the roof over our heads for the last 12 years? And so here are a wide array of sponsors and supporters that help us to bring the EV message to Canada, and actually now into the States too. So as you can see quite a bit of the power sector in here. Look, here's Bruce Nuclear Power in Ontario, Hydro One in Ontario. New Brunswick Power is the generator distributor in New Brunswick, and many others. You also see utilities in here, like Electra and Burlington Hydro, etc. And so these are the folks that help us bring you the cars, the chargers, the meat, and etc. Doing a really cool project with Uber, just to bring it around to the fleet topic. Uber wants to electrify all its drivers by 2030, I believe it is. And so we've been doing an EV education program directly with Uber, drivers on the Uber platform, to convince them that maybe it's not a bad idea to take a look at putting an electric car under their bum for Uber work. So, and of course, all the work that you see here today is our work, because we are a nonprofit. We're not, we don't have any influences from other outside entities, the manufacturers or anybody like that. All the work that you see here today actually was done by Alan, who is our communications guy, and he's on the call with us today. And so everything you see was put together by him, and the research that's on our website, the white papers, that's all done by us. So it's all fairly agnostic. It's all designed to promote EV education, to get people excited about electrifying their ride, and whether that be their personal vehicle or a fleet vehicle. Okay, so let's dive into, is this really a good time to consider looking at electrifying some of the vehicles, or all, in your fleet, whether it's you work for a corporation or a municipality or another government entity. You may have, obviously, you have vehicles that are used for work purposes, and these could be anything from cars to pickup trucks to cargo vans. And as we've seen across the country now, transit buses, garbage trucks, school buses, these are all things that are really easy to electrify. And so we'll take a look at, is this a good move for you? And of course, it's important. This is not a purchase, a retail purchase by a single person. This is a fleet purchase. And there's a couple of factors that to take into consideration when purchasing a vehicle for fleet use. I mean, the first one pretty much is, can the vehicle that you're looking at, or the vehicles that you're going to select from, do the duty that it needs to be done? And this is so important, because you probably answer to higher ups, people who control the purse strings. They've challenged you with going out and purchasing vehicles for the fleet. And you need to be able to respond back to them and say, I think I found a really good vehicle that is going to do the duty that we need to have for this particular application. And so that's sort of criteria number one. When it's looking at a fleet vehicle, if you're looking to electrify it, then a couple of things pop up, of course. I mean, and probably the first one is, does it have the range? Does it have, the towing capability, the cargo hauling, the space we need, but does it have the range? 12 years ago, when the first little EVs came out, they were 135 kilometers of range. I'm happy to say today that pretty much the de facto standard in cars and trucks now is at least 400 kilometers of range. And so, when you're taking a look at, can this vehicle do the duty, the range situation is probably going to be looking pretty good. Nonetheless, I'm going to talk about a few other things that will help you with making decisions about electrifying your fleet in a sec. And then, of course, there's the upfront cost of EVs. And, from what you've probably heard, and maybe you've done some research as well, the upfront capital cost of an EV is probably higher than what the equivalent gas or diesel vehicle would be. Although I'm out here in Alberta, and it's not uncommon to see $85,000 pickup trucks rolling down the road. So, and these aren't even work vehicles. So, as a fleet operator, though, that it's not just about the capital cost. A lot of it has to do with the operating costs. So yes, you purchase it, you amortize that purchase over 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, whatever you're doing with that fleet. But then you probably boil it all down to, what is it going to cost you to operate that vehicle per month? And in some cases, a lot of fleet operators will actually boil it right down to per kilometer cost. And because now you can compare apples to apples, you're looking at what does it cost me to roll this vehicle down the road every day per kilometer. And then, you take a look at your time factor as well, how long you're going to keep it on the fleet. So cost is important. And of course, fleet operators pay specific attention to cost. Duty obviously is first, but then the cost has to be in line as well, all considerations. I mean, whether it's powered by gas, rubber bands, or electricity, these factors still come into play all the time, and they don't change particularly. However, one thing that's going to be a little bit different for you, of course, is the ability to charge this vehicle. And so we're talking about a pure electric vehicle. It doesn't have any gas on board whatsoever. And so, the traditional fleet operator, he or she goes to the gas station and fills up with gas or diesel on a regular basis as needed with a fleet card or a company credit card or whatever it is. One of the beauties of owning an EV is the ability to refuel at home. Sitting out in my garage is a 2018 Nissan Leaf, full electric, and I just plug it into the wall. And that does me just perfect. And we're going to talk about charging and the different levels in a second. But the ability to refuel at home can't be outweighed. And in this particular case, in a fleet, it's going to be at a yard or a parking lot around the building or something like that. And so if you have the availability of EV charging on the property, so when the vehicle is done its duty for the day and it comes home, the driver will plug it in and allow it to refuel itself through the night, very often using off-peak or cheaper electricity, especially if you're in Ontario, when that is available. So this can't be outweighed by, I haven't been to a gas station in a very long time. I even go to the local car wash and it's a spray wash. I don't go to the gas station anymore. So, the being able to refuel at home or at the yard, or behind the fence, wherever, is really important and very, very convenient. And lastly, I'm going to talk a little bit about your employees, because while you are moving forward on this journey to electrify your fleet, you are becoming more knowledgeable, understanding the reasons why it's a great idea, and maybe even going out and purchasing the vehicles, getting to test drive them yourself, that kind of thing. Your employees may not be. And so, what they know is back, years ago. That's what's in their minds. So as you journey through this electrification project, it's very important that you involve the drivers and other employees who are going to be using these vehicles, bring them along in the journey with you. So that by the time you hand them the keys and say, okay, here's your brand new F-150 Ford Lightning pickup. And they don't go, wow, what am I going to do with this? Right? They already know what they're going to do with it. They're going to jump in it and go and enjoy it and do their daily job with it, just like they did with whatever they were driving before. So I can't emphasize that enough. And so let's move on with so qualifying whether you can electrify your fleet or not. And of course, data is key. And as a fleet operator, knowing the data, because this is what you probably do today with your gas and diesel vehicles, is how much it costs to refuel them, how far they drive every day in kilometers, what kind of maintenance programs they're on. You know a lot about what your fleet vehicle does. And yet now we're looking at electrifying, we're looking at vehicles that you don't know too much about. And so, will these vehicles be able to do the same job as what I've been using in the past? And so data is key, right? And so I'm going to introduce you to one company here, and there are others out there, but Geotab happens to be a telematics expert. They started out years ago in Ontario, and as another company actually got bought by Geotab in Kitchener-Waterloo, to be precise. And so basically what they do, as you know, with all vehicles, there's an onboard diagnostic tube port, OBD tube port. It's oftentimes up under the dash, up under your knees, someplace in the vehicle. And it's where the computer gets attached to the vehicle and you can download all kinds of information from this vehicle or any vehicle, gas or diesel. And so what Geotab does is their program, and they have a variety of different programs, and it costs to do it for small and large fleet operators. So if you only have 2 vehicles in your fleet, they're still going to be of huge value to you. They take a little data logger and stick it in that port of your gas or diesel vehicle that you're using today. And they send your driver down the road. And they go about their business for, you pick a number, a week, 2 weeks, a month, whatever you think is going to be enough to gather lots and lots of data for Geotab to crunch. And then they're going to take that data and download it into their fleet models. And they're going to take a look at electric vehicles, which could possibly replace your gas or diesel vehicles and still do the duty. You'll still be able to have the range. It'll still, and hopefully, their model will also show a huge cost saving. And we're going to talk about fuel and maintenance in a sec. But this is the kind of data a fleet operator needs to have their fingers on so that they can put it down on paper and present it to the powers that be that control the purse strings for the organization. And you can say to them, I have proof now that these vehicles can do the job and are probably going to cost us less than the vehicles we're using today. And oh, by the way, yes, they reduce greenhouse gas emissions by a lot. These vehicles don't have tailpipes. And even in Canada, where over 60% of our energy is generated by hydroelectric power. So if you're in BC, it's all hydro. If you're in Saskatchewan, well, Manitoba, Ontario is 60% nukes and 30% hydro. Quebec, all hydro. Newfoundland, Labrador, hydro. So we have a huge amount of very clean electricity in our country. And so even if you plug into the grid here in Alberta, which is the other way around, it's more like 75% natural gas, although we have lots of renewables, solar and wind coming online, it's still cleaner to plug into that Alberta grid and run these vehicles than it is to run a gas or diesel equivalent. So the numbers do add up from greenhouse gas emission reduction, and overall cost of operation should be less as well. If you're looking to see what kinds of vehicles are available for fleets, as we say, are now over 50 models of medium duty vehicles. So everything from the Ford F-150 Lightning on the right there to cargo vans, et cetera, that are on the market today. I don't know, maybe there's somebody out there who's also doing, transit for their city. So, lots of electric buses available now from a variety of manufacturers. But if you were looking for a full list, you can go to that link at the bottom, evfleets.electric autonomy. Our friends over at Electric Autonomy have a great listing that you can take a look at. Maybe Alan could stick that link into the chat for you to copy out. Okay, so I talked about saving money because, yes, we all want to save the planet. We want to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, reduce our carbon footprint for our company or municipality. But will it really save me money? Because in the end, when it comes to a fleet application, can we get more utility from a vehicle per dollar than another vehicle, as is what a lot of fleet operators look at. And so we've just thrown a number up here for a good, for an example of over $10,000 per year compared to a diesel alternative. That is the savings. Our source you can see there is from BrightDrop, which is a brand new EV manufacturer affiliated with General Motors. They're building them in southwestern Ontario. And so, this is what their findings are. That's a substantial number. I mean, holy, it's not like you're saving $500 a year or $5,000. Could save up to $10,000 a year. And, your mileage will vary, right? Your mileage may vary. So let's just talk a little bit about that. So the first big one, of course, is the fuel. You're switching from gas or diesel. We know what that's worth right now. You're switching to electricity as a fuel. If you bring that vehicle back to your yard or place of work, or even if the operator of the vehicle takes it home and plugs it in at home, especially at night, you're switching to electricity, obviously. And across Canada, generally speaking, we pay about 13 cents per kilowatt hour off peak. In some cases, it's higher than that on peak, like in Ontario. Very cheap in Quebec, very cheap in BC. So, what does that turn into? About 1/6 the price of driving gas or diesel to use an electric vehicle, about 1/6. You would do the math in your neighborhood and crunch it down to get the actual. It could be as high as 1/10 cheaper, or maybe only 1/5, whatever. But a huge savings on fuel. And now let's talk about maintenance a little bit, because this is pretty cool. So sitting out in my driveway, as I said, is this Nissan Leaf. There isn't too much difference between that Nissan Leaf and the way it's built electrically, its electric chassis, its platform. It's not too much different than most of the fleet vehicles that are being built electrically today, whether it's a school bus or a cargo van or the F-150 Lightning or whatever it is. It will have a great big battery in the floor of some size. It will then have one or two electric motors, maybe one up the front for sure, and maybe another one in the back if it's all-wheel drive. And it'll probably have power inverters and some power electronics on board to run it all, and lots of computers. We gas and diesel, it doesn't matter what it is, they all have lots of computers. But when you take a look at the maintenance on that vehicle, and you think about a gas or diesel vehicle, and I've owned both in my lifetime, gas and diesel, they want their oil changed every 5,000 to 7,000 kilometers. Even with synthetic oils now, you might get 12,000 kilometers out of them. It's not just the cost of changing the oil in the vehicle. If it's a fleet vehicle, it means it has to be taken out of service for that part of the day or all day that the vehicle is going to go off and have maintenance done. Because you're probably not just going to do an oil change. You might have some other work done at the same time just to take advantage of the out of service time. Well, that means that vehicle's off the road. That means your driver doesn't have a vehicle anymore. So they either have to borrow from somewhere else in the fleet or go rent something. So the more that vehicle has to go out of service for maintenance, the more costs associated with it. Well, you can forget about that in an EV, because I haven't been to the dealer for my Nissan Leaf, and this pretty much applies to many of the other EVs that are out there, for anything except brake maintenance. And that was 2 years ago. My vehicle is now 5 years old with 78,000 kilometers on it. And I spent $180 on that brake maintenance. So what they did, they pulled the wheels and the calipers, they lubed up the sliders, blew all out the dirt. The pads were perfect, the rotors were perfect. They put it all back together. Best maintenance I've ever done, because now my brakes won't seize up in the wintertime. I did put a cabin air filter in it, and I put some wiper blades on it. You got to do that to all kinds of vehicles. That's it. In 5 years, coming up on 5 years in July. Think about that in your fleet vehicle. No oil to change, no belts, no plugs, no injectors. There's no transmission, a massively complex thing. The electric motor has one moving part inside and a couple bearings on the end. It's totally sealed, you never touch it. The battery, it's a great big, huge, flat, sealed up pack. And for the most part, you'll never touch it. You can monitor it, diagnostic, etc., but for the most part, you'll never touch it for the life of the vehicle. The power electronics, they're all sealed up, no maintenance. Yes, you have cooling systems. Every 5-6 years, you're supposed to flush those cooling systems, put in fresh coolant. So to say there's no maintenance isn't quite true, but it's pretty minimal. So that's how we get to the $10,000 you see on the screen per year. You think about how many oil changes you got to do and other maintenance to the vehicle. And another thing, as the vehicle gets older in a gas vehicle or diesel vehicle, there's more to do. Timing belts and timing chains and really expensive stuff, injector maintenance. And I mean, they're complex machines, whereas EVs, mostly a lot of little black boxes under there. And you've got warranty on these vehicles. So there's another great piece of this. So most of the auto manufacturers warrant the power electronics, motor, and battery for 8 years. 8 years. What's the warranty on your fleet vehicles, your gas and diesel vehicles? Bet 8 is not in the number. So, the really expensive pieces that could possibly fail are warranted for a long, long time. So you're looking, and most people, fleet vehicles, 7 years, maybe, something like that. So fuel and maintenance costs substantially reduced on an EV. Yes, you still need to put snow tires on them, and there'll be a windshield washer fluid in it. To say there's zero maintenance isn't quite true, but it's certainly very minimal. Let's move on. I hope I got you excited on the maintenance part. Of course, this is why is this all happening? Why are we so hot to electrify transportation in the world? And of course, it's depending on where you are in the globe, it can be anywhere from 25 to 35% of greenhouse gas emissions driving around. When you think about transportation, our planes, our boats, our trains, our on-highway tractor trailer, and yes, our light-duty vehicles that we all drive around in and use in fleets, they're all powered by gas and diesel, or have been. with some small exceptions for electric trains, Toronto's subway system, or Vancouver's trolley buses. They're still operating after all these years. So yes, there's a huge opportunity to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And of course, we have already heard what our government has to say. Our federal government has a target of no more gas or diesel new car sales by 2035. Wow, super ambitious. Hope I'm here to see that. And so, why is the world doing this? Well, we realize burning fossil fuel is just not the way forward. And, it's just silly to keep doing it. It's just a really bad science experiment, as Elon Musk once put. So, here we have the opportunity, we have the tools, we have the technology. We just need to embrace it, figure out how to use it, and get on with it. So yeah, you can see we're saying 50 plus different models available out there, and new ones being released all year round. Right now, the Toronto Auto Show is going on. I hope if you're in that Greater Toronto area, you will get a chance to go down and visit the show. Why? One of the things that Plug and Drive used to facilitate and is facilitating today is an EV test drive at the auto shows. And we hope to expand that as the auto shows start to come back. Sadly, Calgary's was canceled, and others. But there are 19 electric vehicles available to test drive. Now, obviously, these aren't fleet vans, and I'm going to show you how you might be able to test drive fleet vans in a sec through us at Plug and Drive. But 19 vehicles, I mean, that's just amazing to think. There's manufacturers there from Vietnam called VinFast, just brought 2 SUVs, full electric SUVs to market, and they're on there. Cadillac's got its new Lyric with its new platform underneath. In the fleet area, you've got pickup trucks. Ford F-150 Lightning's been out for a little while now, completely sold out. You'll have to beg them to get one. And then GM, of course, they did their Hummer. It's not really a fleet vehicle. It's just a halo vehicle to demonstrate technology. But they, of course, are going to come out with their Silverado and GMC pickups. So, and then Dodge just actually released, a week and a half ago, they introduced the Dodge Ram full electric, very nice looking vehicle. And then you have some interesting startups such as Rivian out of the States, full electric, beautiful thing. I've seen a couple running around here in the Bow Valley out where I live, and just an amazing vehicle. More of a recreational theme on that, but whereas the other traditional manufacturers are focusing on fleets as well as just personal vehicles. So tons and tons to choose from out there. And again, I hope that link we put up earlier will help you find something that will work for your fleets. Okay. So we have a tool on our website at Plug and Drive, which will allow you to compare cars. And so if your fleet consists of cars and SUVs, then please take a look at ev.pluganddrive.ca. Maybe Alan can stick that up in the chat. To find your EV map. So you can put up 3 vehicles at a time, and you can have a gas vehicle, say your gas vehicles that are in your fleet now, or diesel, and then you can put up 1 or 2 EVs beside it. It will come, and you can adjust stuff like how long will you keep it? 3, 5, 7 years. What's your price of gasoline or diesel in your neighborhood? You can change that. What's the price of electricity that you pay in BC or Ontario? It might be different. And a bunch of other factors that you can change. And then it will plot for you based on the criteria you've given it, which vehicle is going to turn out to be cheaper for you to drive over the 3, 5, 7 years, whatever you're going to keep it. It's a beautiful little tool, and we hope to expand it to include more fleet vehicles in there, like the cargo vans that are becoming more popular from Mercedes, Ford, BrightDrop, etc. So please take a look at that tool if you get a chance. And then doing these fleet assessments, I can't stress enough that this is the way basically to quantify the impact of putting an EV on your fleet. And so, there's not just Geotab, but Enterprise as an Enterprise Car and Truck Rentals. They also have Fleet Management, Roy Foss Leasing, and a number of other fleet leasing companies across the country all have very good programs that will help you make those decisions. We haven't talked about charging yet. And just as an example, here's a couple of the vehicles, just to give you an idea of price. These are the base trim level prices for these vehicles. To give you an idea of range, is there for utility, cargo hauling, weight, etc. You can see from here that, I mean, you know, the F1, well, if you can find one for 68,000, good luck. They're probably closer to 100, but anyway. And I have no experience with the e-Transit, but I've seen it and crawled over it. It's a beautiful van. And, you know, decently priced. I mean, these prices aren't out of line. And then you add in the reduced maintenance and fuel costs, and you do the math, as they say. And look at the range on these. I mean, you know, these are very decent ranges on here. Many of them have optional batteries. You can buy a standard size battery with, say, 350 kilometers range, or you can buy a larger battery if you feel you need it, especially if you live in a colder climate and you're going to have more impact from the cold on range. So you could get the bigger battery so that you make sure the vehicle can do the duty every single day. So let's take a look at charging. I just want to talk briefly about charging, because it is something that needs to be addressed as a fleet operator, putting EVs onto your fleet. So we're showing level 2 and 3, but there is a level 1. I use it here to charge my Leaf, which is obviously not a fleet vehicle. And level 1 is basically just the outlet in the wall, 110 volt outlet. And where I think that might have an impact on your vehicle use is the operator of your fleet vehicle, if they have the ability or permission to take the vehicle home at night, especially right away when you first hand them over the keys. They may not have access to one of these level 2 chargers at their home already. Never mind a 220 volt circuit installed in their garage, driveway, or wherever. And so they may have just a good old wall socket in their driveway or garage. And using the cord set that comes with every single vehicle, it's just like the cord set that comes with your laptop. One end goes into the wall and the other end goes into the vehicle. And they can take that vehicle home and plug it in. It's slow. It's 7 kilometers of range per hour. And so, you know, you think about it, they get home at, say, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, they plug in the vehicle, and they don't go until maybe 12 hours later, 7 o'clock in the morning. That's 12 hours at 7. That's 80-something odd, 84 odd kilometers of range that they've recovered. If that's all they drove that day, then they recovered the full range for that day, and their battery will be full, back up full again. Obviously, it may not be a full solution. And so this is where level 2 and 3 come in. And we're focusing on level 2 because mostly for fleet operations, that vehicle is going to come back at the end of its day and it's going to plug into a level 2 charger. So as you can see from the first line, 1 hour of charge will equal about 30 to 70 kilometers of range. It depends a little bit on how powerful a charger, how much amperage this. Most of them draw around 30 amps, but you can go as high as 70 amps, and that'll get you the 70 kilometers of range per hour on a 220 volt circuit. And so you can see that if the vehicle even came home empty and it was a 500 kilometer vehicle, you do the math at 30 kilometers, how long will it take to recover that vehicle? And they're not going to come home empty. Like, nobody really wants to be driving around on an empty gas tank, and nobody really wants to be driving around on 10% battery. And so they're probably all going to come back with 10 or 20% left. And again, that'll be up to you too, to program the duty of this vehicle, to figure out what the capabilities, but what you need the capability to be, and then match the vehicle to it. And so what will that cost you? Well, at electricity rates across Canada, it could be anywhere from, you know, a full battery to fill the battery up completely, could be anywhere from $2 to $5 or $6 per night if that vehicle is using all of its battery every day. More reality would be that it maybe uses half of the battery, so $2 to $3, $2 to $4 per day, if indeed that. We are talking about the charger plug formats here on the right. So this one here is the J1772. It's the part that plugs into the car. And it is the standard out there for both level 1 and level 2 for everybody but Tesla. Tesla uses this format right here for everything, level 1, 2, and 3. And so Tesla gives their owners an adapter, which will allow them to use this charger. They stick the adapter into the end and then plug it into their car. There's actually an adapter that goes the other way too, from a J1772, from a Tesla into a J1772. So level 2, this is an example here of a home unit. The same company, ChargePoint, also makes commercial units where they might be mounted on the wall of a building by the parking spaces where the vehicles charge. They will also have maybe the ability to charge 1, 2, 3, 4. You put up a bank of them right across, depending on how many vehicles you have. Okay, so that's charging at the yard. You also can find level 2 chargers out in the public world. They're great, but they're also sort of slow at 30 kilometers of range. Even if the driver pulls up for an hour for lunch, that's all they're going to get. But what they can do is they can plug the vehicle in to charge and also precondition the vehicle so their cab stays nice and warm in the wintertime or cool in the summer while the vehicle is charging. So that's sort of cool, a little extra benefit there. But if for some particular reason, maybe the vehicle has to go on a special trip, and so normally it sticks around town, it stays local to do its work, but every once in a while it has to go off and pick up something or make a delivery or whatever, then it may not have enough range to do that round trip. And so it's going to rely on what's called level 3 or DC fast chargers, direct current fast chargers. There's an example of one. And these you would not necessarily install, we won't install them at home. You could install them at work, but they're really expensive. Where you can see the cost of these is not too bad. The cost of these is while the machine itself is $35,000, then it might cost another $30,000 to put in the electricity supply that it's going to need. So it's pretty heavy duty. But on the road, this is what's going to charge your vehicle in minutes. And so if they're out in the community or going out of the region somewhere, they can find these chargers and plug in, top up in minutes, anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes, which again is a lunch break. You can go to chargemycar.ca on our website and check out and see a selection of mostly home chargers, but all the companies that make those home chargers on our website also make commercial chargers. So you can make note of, in this case, it's Flow. Go to flow.ca, click on commercial, and you can see the commercial chargers. ChargePoint, Grizzly, and a variety of others are out there. So urge you to take a look at the different chargers that are out there. Okay, let's wrap this up really quick and talk about incentives. And so we mentioned off the top, Jessica mentioned that the Charge Up program from ICE. Stay tuned for an upcoming announcement about program funding expansion on that. Sounds pretty good. And I think Jessica or Alan was going to put a link into the Zoom chat for you to copy and paste. So keep an eye on that. So that's incentives to help defray the cost of installing electric vehicle chargers at your place of business. But as we mentioned off the top, the Canadian government is looking for us all to get off of gas and diesel powered vehicles by 2035. No more new ones. And so they're willing to help. And they know that the fleet experience is super important to helping people understand use and operation of EVs. So as an example, somebody who drives around in a Ford pickup, and that's what they use for their work. Guess what they're very likely to have at home? A Ford pickup. Why? They're comfortable in it. They know how to operate it. They know its capabilities. And they've used it at work for a ton of really cool things. And they want to do that at home too. And so I'm not saying everybody's going to go out and buy an e-Transit and keep it in their driveway, but having experienced how to use EVs to see that they can do the range, they can haul stuff, that they're easy to charge. Like all the use of the vehicle is their experience as a fleet driver. And they take that experience and they go, oh, I see how well it works in my work environment. Wouldn't it be great to have one at home too? And so the government is willing to cough up a ton of incentive money to help you buy these slightly more expensive EVs and get them on the road. We've got the link right there on the screen, and we can maybe stick that into the chat as well. But it's the federal government website. I'm sure you can Google it up pretty quick. And so just a quick look at what that might turn into. So, you can see there's 3 different fleet vehicles, And you can see based on how long you're going to keep them or lease them, what kind of incentive money is available for them. It's pretty substantial. That's pretty good. So I urge you to take a look at that, because that's really going to affect the math, the data that you're going to be doing to calculate whether these vehicles, whether the time is right for you to put these vehicles into your fleet today. Okay, so we would love you to drive some of these. It's not going to be possible, obviously, for everybody in the country, but we do have a couple of events coming up. So March the 9th in Vancouver, if you're out in the BC area and can get out, keep an eye on our website for location and timing. You'll probably need to sign up so we can schedule the day. But we will have a variety of different vehicles for you to test drive out in Vancouver. And whoop, I just messed up my screen. There we go. And we're also going to have the similar thing going on in Toronto. So again, you can look on our website to see when this is going to happen. I'm super jealous. I would love to be able to crawl all over this vehicle. This is a purpose-built from the ground up, no holds barred, you know, EV. I mean, this, you can't buy it as a gas or diesel, and they got it in 2 different sizes. Yeah, it's, and I mean, obviously it's catering to the Amazon, Canada Post, you know, the van fleet delivery, the last mile, last 100 miles. So yeah, fantastic vehicle being built right in Ontario. And so if you have the opportunity at either of those, I hope you can make it and come out and check out driving these vehicles. And you know, I encourage you just to take any EV for a test drive. You know, the drive is different, but I like to say good different. It's different than what you're used to. Regenerative braking, we haven't even talked about it here, but it makes the drive feel a little different. And as you get used to it, you realize this is a good thing. You know, it saves my brakes, generates electricity, and it's easier to control the vehicle in traffic. This is great. This is a really nice feature. And you can't really experience it just by talking about it. You really have to take the vehicle for a test drive. And all of these vehicles that we've been talking about, both vans and pickup trucks and cars, they all have them. If they're electric, they all have that feature. So yeah, driving is believing, as they say. So I hope if you need to follow up with us further after this, and we're going to get to some questions, please sign up for some of our webinars and check out our events on our website. Come on and see us at our meets and roadshow events. And you can always reach out at contact@pluganddrive.ca with some questions, anything about vehicles, EVs, obviously, and we'll do our best to get back to you and with a good answer. And so that brings me to the end of the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. Jessica, do we have any questions out there?
Yes, thank you so much, Ron. That was really wonderful. And I really liked your point about bringing the fleet team along on the journey while you're learning about EVs and infrastructure. I think that's just such a great point. We did have a message come through, and the question was, can communities book or request to have the meat trailer come to them? Yes,
they sure can. And so you could direct that inquiry to contact@pluganddrive.ca. I will qualify it though. We don't always have the meat trailers sponsored to the fullest extent. In other words, if it has to travel, it's going to cost us to move it to your community. Then we have to put staff in place, bring cars along with us. All of these things are a cost. While we have built it, we then have to fund it for its work. And so we may reach out to you to say, well, what funding opportunities from the federal or provincial government could there be? From local utilities that might want to participate, because the utility is the power source now, right? It's the energy source for these vehicles. They might want to participate, and others. So if we can come to an agreement on what it's going to cost to deliver this event at your city or town, then, and we can figure out how to fund it, then absolutely, we're there, 100%.
Great, that's great news. Thank you very much.
We have one of the trailers here in Alberta. It's actually right here in Canmore. So we don't have to take it too far to Alberta or BC.
Okay, great. Good to know for those in the area. We have another question here. So EV range depends on many factors like outside temperatures, loads, driving methods, operating between 20 to 80% battery. Um, and then there's an acronym, forgive me, I'm not familiar with it, but capital SO and then capital C, etc. So should we consider the
Sure.
minimum range of EVs to be on the safe side for fleet electrification? And then the second is it a good option for EV manufacturers to have an option for a modular battery so that companies can choose the right size of battery for their fleet and can reduce some of the upfront cost? Actually, sorry, forgive me. There are three questions. So let's just start with the first one. So EV range depends on many factors. And then should we consider the minimum range of EVs to be on the safe side for fleet electrification?
Yeah, and you know, the good news in a fleet application is, you know, the application, the range the vehicle has to drive is probably pretty known. It's pretty well known. Whereas with our personal vehicles, you know, a couple of times a year we go on a big, long, massive road trip. We don't even know where we're going to go this summer, but we just know we're going to go somewhere in the country. And so our personal vehicles have to not only do our commute locally, but then every couple of times a year we have to toddle off across the country and do these big, massive road trips. Whereas a fleet vehicle very often has a very confined space that it operates in. It's a known space. And so, you know, if that daily use, and again, I go back to gathering the data through the analytics is so important. If that data reveals that the vehicle rarely travels more than 200 kilometers per day, then you know, you buy a vehicle with a battery that can do 400 kilometers, and you've got 50% extra capacity there, which will maybe get you'll tap into that if you have to tow something. You'll tap into that if you go on an extra long trip to make a one-off delivery or pick up something. You'll tap into that if the weather goes down to, like here in Canmore today, minus 24, going down to almost minus 30 tonight. Now, luckily, my Leaf is parked in the slightly heated garage, and so it won't see those temps. But if it did, it would impact the range of that Leaf significantly, maybe up to 50%. No, it's minus 30. I mean, you know, that's really stinking cold. So yeah, you build in as much capacity as you can, as much capacity as it makes financial sense to do so. Because remember, the battery is the single largest component in any of these vehicles, the single most costly component in any of these vehicles. So to upgrade the battery to the longer range battery might add another 15 grand or 10 grand to the cost of the vehicle. And so you have to factor that into the ownership experience. Is it worth it for you? Is that extra capacity going to be used a lot? Or maybe the 1 or 2 times a year where the person needs to go a long distance, then they take the old diesel truck that we still have and we haven't got rid of. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So before getting into the other, I see it's multiple parts. So thank you so much for those wonderful questions in the chat there. But before I get into those, I actually just want to ask a follow-up question to that. You mentioned the fleet assessments, and I was wondering if you have an idea about kind of the cost of a service like that, or at least a range estimate of a cost of a service like that might be helpful, if you know.
I do not. I don't. But I mean, I do, but it was when I knew them and I was closer to them back in the day. That was like 5, 6 years ago. And so those costs would not be relevant to today. You know, if you have a couple of vehicles, 2, 3 vehicles in your fleet, this isn't thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, nothing like that. It's hundreds of dollars to have this analysis done. And they have different levels of service that you pick what you think you're going to need and pay for that service. So I urge you to get hold of Geotab and others that do this kind of work, and they can quote you on what it is that you're trying to accomplish and give you a solid price on that.
That sounds good. That's good to know. Okay, so the next question was, is it a good option for EV manufacturers to have an option for a modular battery so that companies can choose the right size of battery for their fleet and can reduce some upfront costs?
Yeah, it's a very good idea. You know, because of the evolution of EVs, we all wanted the biggest range possible. And then So we're going out and we're buying, and Tesla was one of the first to do it. They offered a vehicle with a 400-kilometer battery and a 500-kilometer battery. And then so everybody, I'll buy the 500-kilometer battery. Well, that's great. But, how many days out of the year do you actually drive 500 kilometers? I mean, don't forget, you can come back home, plug in, go to bed, and sometime in the night, no matter what you drove the day before, that battery is going to be full again. So you always start the next morning with a full tank, so to speak. So a fresh 500 kilometers. What did you drive today? 80. Did I paid an extra $12,000 so I could have another 100 kilometers of range? This is important to a fleet operator when they're counting dollars and cents and pennies to make sure that they fit the duty of the vehicle they're looking at to the duty it needs to do. And so don't go and buy the big battery if you don't really need it. Maybe you have a fleet of 5 vehicles. One of them has the big battery and the other 4 don't need it. And they just get the standard range battery. And then if somebody needs to go on a big trip, they take the big battery vehicle, they just swap. So, that kind of argument comes into play quite a bit. It's always down to the dollars and cents though, isn't it? But it's great that the manufacturers are offering you a choice. In the F-150 Lightning, there's 2 sizes of battery. Teslas have them. Some of the cars have them. And more of the fleet trucks, you can get at least 2, in some cases, 3 different sizes of battery. So it's great that they offer that choice.
Great, thank you. Next question here. We have Indigenous communities are using many off-road vehicles, so ATVs, snowmobiles, etc. How should they proceed to electrify their fleets?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, it's great news in that market because there's a company in Quebec called Tiaga, Tiaga. And Tiaga, a good Canadian company, has developed both a snowmobile, a full electric snowmobile, and a full electric watercraft. And so it won't be too long before you see a side-by-side in that regards as well. I just saw 2 days ago that Bombardier, or BRP, Bombardier Recreational Products, as they're known now, BRP, has just introduced an all-electric quad. And so it's been a little bit slow in coming in the recreational side. I've seen them, 5 years ago, I've seen them starting to happen. Sometimes they're just startups that are building, but it's themselves. But it's nice to see the mainstream manufacturers, the brands that you're used to seeing and that you know and love, that are also now realizing that the batteries have the ability now to provide all kinds of power and range. And then if you're just booting around town in your quad, or even if you're going out into the bush, you've got 150, 200 kilometers of range. Obviously, that's on nice flat level road in a nice warm day. When you get into colder temps and really woody and hilly terrain, then that range is going to reduce substantially. So, you need to live with the vehicle for a little while to learn about it and its capabilities. But, you can find power almost anywhere. You can bring a full electric quad home and plug it into the wall and charge it up. You don't need any special equipment or anything for that. The reduced maintenance costs of not, basically you just plug it in every day. And for years and years, you do nothing else to it. Maybe you put some tires on it if you wear them out. So those upsides are well worth it. And, if you were to take some solar panels with you into the woods and you were on a hunting trip for 4 or 5 days, you take some solar panels with you. And when you get to your destination, you set the solar panels up, you plug it into your EV, and boom, you power up your EV. Might take you a day or 2, but hey, you're probably going to walk around to do your hunting. You're not going to take the vehicle, although it's nice and quiet. So, the critters won't hear you coming. So,
thank you.
Yeah, good news in that regard. The electrification of, recreational products for water and land is starting to happen quite quickly now. Boats is already way ahead. I mean, we know in boats, we've had electric trolling motors for years and years and years, right? We would go to the juicy fishing hole where we knew the fish were on our gas motor, and then we'd shut that off and we'd troll with a little electric trolling motor. Well, those motors have gotten bigger and bigger, and now they're the primary propulsion method for the boat. And so you can use them to get there and to troll with, because they're very, very, you can control their speeds really, really easily. And then you get it back, and Yeah, and winterization is a snap. There's nothing to do to them. You just turn them off, put them up on the land, and leave it. Like there's no winterization. There's no glycol to do, and none of that kind of stuff. And to charge it up, you just run an extension cord down the dock and plug it in. How simple is that? So electrification of boats is happening quite quickly now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I know we're getting a little bit close to time, so I understand if anybody needs to jump off the call, but let's just try and get through just a few more of our questions here. I'll also make note that there are links that have been added into the chat there for some of an electric side-by-side and the company you just mentioned, Ron. Thank you very much. As well, I just want to acknowledge that there are also funding streams for specialty vehicles available. And so that's also something to kind of consider. I'm thinking of some Clean BC, I know has a stream for specialty vehicles as well right now. So for those of you in that area, please go ahead and check that out if you're interested. We have one more question here, which is our electric grid ready enough to incorporate the EV target by 2035?
Yeah, super cool question. And I'm not an engineer and I'm not a grid person. So I'll speak a little bit generally there. And of course, I've had many conversations with people who are engineers and electrical engineers and work in the utility and generation and distribution networks across Canada. So we have two issues. The first question is, do we have enough, generally speaking, across the country? Right now, the answer is yes, because of course, we're not going to convert, millions and millions of gas and diesel vehicles to electric vehicles overnight. Not going to happen. I mean, the government alone has set a target to 2035, but that doesn't mean all the gas and diesel will be gone. It just means you won't be able to buy a new one. There'll still be plenty of old ones running around. And so we'll have, it'll take many years to convert the entire vehicle fleet off of gas and diesel and put it on electric, if indeed it ever completely happens. So, in the province of Ontario, you can look up what's being generated right this second, and you can see that we're only using probably 60 to 70% of the energy. We could, if we fired up all the gas peaker plants and fired up all the nukes and fired up all the solar and all the wind and all the hydro, we would have way more energy to refuel these electric vehicles than we actually need today. And that's the same even here in Alberta, where, yes, it's a lot of fossil fuel out here, but we're adding wind and solar all the time. And if you look at generation today, we have the capability to generate 18,000 megawatts here in the province of Alberta if we turn it all on, but we're only using 10,000 megawatts right now. So huge extra capacity. Especially this is the case at night. So when we all come home and we've finished cooking our dinner and we turn out the lights and we all go to bed and a lot of industry shuts down, we have this huge extra capacity. We actually have to turn down the hydroelectric and turn down the gas peaker plants. And so wouldn't it be great if we could keep them running and power something? And that would be charging up the batteries in our vehicles while they're sitting in our driveway at night. And so that's the first part of the answer. The second part, though, isn't such good news. We have a lot of old infrastructure hanging on poles across Canada. You go into older neighborhoods across Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Montreal, and you look up and see those transformers hanging on the poles. They're 50 kilowatt units. They've been hanging there for 35 years. Some of the wires even have the insulation hanging off of them. It's old stuff. And if we started adding EV chargers, it's like adding another stove to every single house. And when we turn that stove on, we don't just turn it on, cook our soup and turn it off. We leave it on for 7 or 8 hours to charge that battery up in the car. And so it'd be like adding another stove that runs all night to every house on the block. That little transformer is not going to handle it. So as EVs are added into the transportation mix, then the infrastructure will have to be upgraded as well by the utilities. Some of it needs to happen anyway. It was, they were going to do it anyway. And this is just lighting a little bit of fire to their feet to get it done sooner. We have the capacity today, and we will have the capacity tomorrow. Short answer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ron. Thank you so much to Plug and Drive and all of our participants today. We want to encourage you all to get on the ICE network, keep the conversation going. I'm seeing some great, interesting additional comments here in the chat. So please, everyone, join us, keep chatting with each other. Please reach out to Plug and Drive. They have so much to offer, and really wonderful to work with. So please, and also with ICE, of course. If you have any questions, I'll put my email here in the chat as well for anybody who would like to reach out. Thank you so much all for joining us today.
Pleasure speaking with you all. Stay charged.
Thank you. Have a beautiful day, everyone.